So early on a Sunday morning, I am impressed because most of us were up way too late last night. If you are in the panel of Veterans That Write Fantasy, you have found the right place. If you are not, well, feel free to close your eyes and take a nap. So,
this is a room full of vets. I dare you.
We won't
take it personally, but we do reserve the right to F with you.
I slept through 10 months of Bosnia, so.
Okay, so I'm now Todd, and will be moderating the panel, and at the moment I'm the only person up here who has not served, which, so we're going to be very grateful to the men and women we have up here. But let's go ahead and start. Would you please introduce yourself? Tell us what branch of Army you were in. How many, Army? Wow. I've had 3 cups of coffee. I'm not quite awake.
We don't take no crayon eaters up here.
You know, I thought about bringing some, but I don't think there's any Marines, right?
There's one.
I love crayon.
Good morning snack.
It's roughage.
Yeah, but I thought we write, so you'd have to be literate.
But I also do poetry, so.
Okay, I tell you this panel's going to go off the rails. But what branch of the military you were in, how long you served, and what your rank was when you got out?
My name is Gordon Andrews. I'm half of Lone Andrews. Let's see, I joined the Navy in '89, and then I got out, used the GI Bill, went to college, met my wife, and then we were poor, so I joined the Army because she wouldn't let me go back in the Navy, probably for the best. And so I ended up serving 8 years, and I got out of the Army as a E5P, promotable.
Hey folks, DJ Bodden, I'm a former Marine. Sorry. I read books before I joined the Marine Corps, so that's the entirety of my literary experience. I was a captain when I got out, Cobra pilot, and I was in for 13 years counting the Naval Academy.
Hi, I'm Brune, and I joined the Army October 2nd, 2001 as a college specialist. Did that for a few years, and then went to the dark side, and I retired as a major from the reserve after about 10 years active, 10 years reserve, so altogether about 20 something. It took them like 9 months to process my ETS packet or my retirement packet, so I think I now have 22 years of service.
I'm Doug Burbey. I got commissioned as a lieutenant in 1994 in the Army Ordnance Corps. So I spent 10 years in armor and infantry battalions, essentially, basically climbing all the poles and fixing tanks. And then one afternoon I jumped off the back of the tank, blew the knee out for like the 2nd time, and I said, hey, what's this Army Acquisition Corps thing? I heard that's easy and you don't have to jump off the tank. So I became an Acquisition Corps officer for the last 10 years of my career, specializing in electronic warfare, systems development, and cyber warfare. Which means right after I retired, I went back to the Army as a civilian, and I still do the same thing. I just get paid more money, and then I don't have to jump off tanks or take PT tests, and I can get back. So I spent about 21 years in the Army, still serving as a civilian today as well.
Can you guys hear me? It's kind of keyed out, right? I lost my voice. I'm doing great. I'm Reynolds. I write as TJ Reynolds. I served under a different name. It's crazy being trans. I joined the Army in like 2002, and then I did a tour of Iraq and got out afterward. Army infantry. I was a 2-2. Such a beautiful guy.
Well, so we definitely have a wide range of service and then the different branches. So one of the first questions is what specific experience have you ever had while you served that you've actually put into your books?
All of them. Just before we go on, I just wanted to ask, show of hands, veterans in the room? Family of veterans? Thank you for your service. I appreciate it. If you need someone to talk to after this panel, please come see me. If you have not had someone to talk to for a while, please come see me. But yeah, everything.
DJ. That was nice. Like, do you want to pick us or should we just jump in?
Well, go ahead and start.
I got a good one.
Okay.
Okay, so I like to, when I first started, I was like, I won't do self-insert at all. And then, so then I put in too many real scenes. and it was costly because, of course, the desktop warriors told me that certain elements of combat weren't real. When I'm like, but that happened. Fuck you. Sorry, I've already done the thing. Okay. Whatever. But I think I learned a little bit more poise and how to like step back 1 or 2 layers and still tell the exact truth. And even more important, I've gotten to tell, like in this book, I got to do a like fantasy world grieving, letting go of a lost brother that I didn't get to do. And that was really good. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just writing it, and then the scene finished. So I was like that. Oh, I needed that super bad. Yeah, so good stuff.
Well, that's interesting because it's kind of going to, you don't realize you're putting stuff that actually happened in the scenes until you realize you put stuff that actually happened in the scene. So a lot of that's even conversations. Like like I said, everybody's here. The dumbest conversations you have at like 4 o'clock in the morning when you're sitting in a vehicle doing whatever you're doing, or sitting in a tent, or sitting in a hole somewhere. The next thing you know, you're writing that entire scene into a book because it's so absurd. And like I said, people go, well, that would never happen. Shit, that happened like every day. Yeah, and you realize you write some of your own stuff in there when you don't intend to. But that does become cathartic in some areas.
Yeah, I want to second that because I never really started out to write specifically military-focused fantasy, science fiction, or really anything. And then after I started getting short stories published and started looking at all of them, I was like, well, I guess this is a thing that I write. It usually does tend to have a couple of layers between the incident or whatever it is that I'm taking inspiration from, because you can't just dump a bunch of trauma on readers without some sort of context. And so I try to, and also I also don't want someone who knows me to read something and be like, oh, that's coming from that terribly traumatic incident where we all were very sad for a long time. But there was a story, actually it wasn't fantasy. The one that I've drawn the most directly from was a short story that was in the Veterans Writing Project Journal, Dark 30. They had like a issue that was all women writers. And I was like, I'm just gonna pull a few things together. It's just gonna be like this lighthearted, maybe like a little literary focus. And everybody who read it has been like,
Lighthearted.
I'll throw my major was poli-sci with a bent on psychology. I was fascinated by the recruit training process, about how you take a rational, sane person and you turn them into someone who will run towards the sound of gunfire, and think that's a good idea. And what I usually try to work into my books is the stuff I see less of. Feelings of inadequacy that you didn't do enough. The feeling that you weren't brave enough. The feeling that shooting the other guy wasn't really that bad, but getting shot at sometimes sucks and sticks with you for a little bit longer. I remember at one point during one deployment, I had pissed off the human guys by being a little bit too good at talking to people. So they decided to throw more intelligence gathering at me. So they stuck me in a tent with a known Taliban drug dealer who has many people around that area, carried a knife. And it was just one of those moments where I saw that we weren't exactly playing on the same team. And you don't get a lot of that in a lot of stories. So I tried to work that in and get that full spectrum. But like you said, in manageable pieces, where if you know, you know, but and if you don't, you get maybe an understanding of the gray. And I think that one enriches the story and can be useful. I've also made it a policy that my experiences are not something I need to shield you from. You can either talk to me or you can fuck off. And if you asked me a question you didn't want the answer to, then you were about to learn that you shouldn't have asked that question. And that has made things much healthier for me over time.
I don't know if there's anything specific because we sort of write urban fantasy, and so like in Kate's world, a lot of things that maybe I would have done are not probably applicable to that. The closest I would say would probably be in our Hidden Legacy series where the grandmother works on track vehicles, because I ended up being, for whatever reason, with a bunch of field artillery guys for a long time. So I guess just her motor pool and the things she does kind of comes from seeing those guys do that. I mean, I wasn't field artillery. I just fixed their combos so they could fuss at each other. But yeah, I mean, just nothing specific, I would say.
Okay, so how much, I mean, all of you have created worlds with military in it. How much do you try to make it realistic to the branch you serve? Or do you try very hard to make things different so it doesn't seem like it's just our Navy or our Army or our Air Force? Gordon, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the last thing. I mean, I guess,
Because you had Sean.
Sean is military, Ramon is military, and I think it's more they're products of that, of having served in that. And I've been with some other militaries, and I think, I want to say like being in the army, wherever, but I also served with like Turkish soldiers who were conscripts, and that was very different for them. Like they came on the ship because we were the problem. We kind of accidentally blew up a Turkish ship. So, I know, this is a real no bullshit story. Like, we were supposed to shoot over their bow and we shot their bridge. To make up for that, we were giving them a bunch of our old crappy ships, and I was on one of those old crappy ships. And so we were training them, but we did not realize at first that these guys had no choice. Like, we were all volunteers even back then, right? These guys, they like snatched them off the street. Like, you're in the, and they didn't even have, they just chose like, you're gonna be Marine, you're gonna be in the Navy. And those guys were hating life. Like their life was, their NCOs would come down and smack them around. And we couldn't do anything about it. Like they told us, don't get involved. So I think if we have a character, Lon and I, that's a veteran, it's probably more reflective of being in our military than being in someone else's. I mean, so, I don't know if that answers the question or not.
DJ?
I think it comes down to good writing, right? A novel is not real life, a novel is life heightened. So you can't do a direct transcription of military life because most of military life is boring. I was a Cobra pilot, and an hour and 50 minutes of each flight was transiting from point A to point B with 10 minutes of excitement. So you have to skip to the fun bits. I remember I was writing on urban fantasy in my first series, and I wrote a group of 8 hunters, like they were Marines bullshitting before they went and go kill something. It just happened to be werewolves and vampires instead of something else. But I think you can get the feel of being there. And I think that feeling is valuable both for people who miss it and people who have never experienced it. In Switzerland, where I live now, they maintain a military for no practical reason other than the fact that it brings 7 million people at one point in their lives together, gets them speaking the same language, and they have 4 official languages. And it's the second biggest item on their national budget because cohesion, the feeling of togetherness is something very valuable. And part of the point of books, the reason why we did rarely on occasion read books in the Marine Corps, was to cultivate what we call the 2,000-year-old mind, right? By reading both fiction and nonfiction, we acquire the experiences that hopefully we will never have to experience because we will see them coming a mile away and say, oh, well, hell no. So that's what I'd say is it's not necessarily about replicating what I lived unless there's something really crunchy that I feel like would fit well with that story. It's about capturing the various conditions of all the experiences that we've had, which included foreign militaries, which included the enemy, which included our own experiences, which included when we were working with other lesser services, and and trying to be as faithful and true and emotionally resonant as possible.
So as a member of the oldest branch, no, I really agree with a lot of what you said. In my own work, I've only recently started writing urban fantasy that falls directly, that's taking place with the militaries that look like what we served in. For the most part, like for instance, with the one published series, which is just one published book at this point, I drew on the characters come from recognizable militaries. Like there's a character who comes from the Army, she's a psychological operations officer. We've got a character who shows up who was a Marine, but they're working for an organization that was that was created based on some of the experience that I had working with people, with contractors, which good and bad experiences there, people from other organizations across the spectrum of 3 letters, so ATF, DEA, FBI, a bunch of other ones. And the thing is, these sorts of organizations, they're made of people, right? The people say the most important weapon system in the military is the people. And if you get some good ones, if you get some good leaders, you get to serve under some good leaders, or you get some, great people like that, then you can get some stuff done. And if you don't, then you spend most of your time bitching about it and not getting anything done. So all of that to say that I don't necessarily draw directly on the experience that I personally had, and I try to stay away from directly saying, oh, this is the weapon system, because things change. Like in 2001, so when we went to Iraq in 2003, and then when I came back in 2005, it was almost a completely different battlefield, different weapon systems, different vehicles, different mindset. I'm like, as soon as you have something super authentic, someone's gonna read it 5 years from now, like, well, they don't use that weapon system in Burbey anymore. I'm like, well, they did when I was in. Jesus Christ, get off my lawn.
That's really interesting, because so from when I was in Iraq, I was in the transitional army from the very early 90s to the late, mid 2000 teens. So I went from starting my career with a paper map with a piece of plexiglass on top of it, Velcro to my leg, with grease pencils as I'm in like the track of, the outside of a 113 with a 50 cal, and like 2 radios that we were low speed enough that they literally just snapped into our chin strap to hold the old 77 series radios to the helmet.
That's why I got such a thick neck.
That and tacos. But then, so within my 20-year career, I went from literally the same technology that my dad had used in Vietnam to, I got out before the drone war Army stuff came in, but now global positioning systems, GPSs, digital transition of messaging between squad leaders all the way up to their brigade commanders if they needed to, full motion video, intel feeds down to the infantry level, GPS guided munitions, like from Vietnam to that, a 20-year window. So you're absolutely right. For us to write about, here's, I write militarized urban fantasy. So for me, yes, the military is a very big focus inside of there. But niching into a certain technology and time you're going to get it wrong every single time because it moves so fast. So that's why I do urban fantasy, because now it's magic. So screw you, I can do whatever I want, right? So, but with that, because what I didn't want to do is write a book where everyone starts filling all my social media feeds with 9mm versus 45 arguments and shit like that. Nobody needs that. So some things, you're right, when you talk about, sometimes I get a little nebulous, but I've changed what everybody knows just enough. It's like, okay, so we're using, it could be an M4 type carbine or a Tommy gun or whatever the hell it would happen to be, but throw a little magic in there, like the munitions are magically amplified by, you know, low-level mages who work in an ammo plant like slaves, and just like that. Literally, I have that in the story. They like kidnap like hedge mages basically and make them work in like ammo plants. Just going zap, 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 zap. So the bullets kill demons. Perfectly legitimate for the scenario that we're having in there, but now I don't have to have that specific munition debate. But because what I do, it is veterans. Also work with a lot of foreign military stuff, so I actually started the first book in the series, in the first 10 pages in the prologue, and I killed 95% of all military combat power on the entire planet. They're easy now to make shit up, right? So, and then until I had to write the prequels, and then I actually had to make it a little more militaristic there. But yeah, so I put stuff I know in there. I definitely put the military things in there, but I don't want the reader to get turned off by I got some technical detail wrong. So, you know, I make it just a little different.
I'm trying to help her.
Yeah, this is a good question. So I write mostly fantasy, but I have a smutty pen name too, and I've done a lot of isekai with that one. And in that case, they have their previous memories. So that was fun because I got to design like a blast axe. And I was like, what would a battle axe be like if it was a shotgun too? And so it can like switch around and blast energy, but then it upgraded to a very 240-esque. It had like 30 seconds of burst, and he just took down like a whole bunch of monsters. And I'm like, this is awesome. The readers didn't like it. I'm like, whatever. But aside from just having fun with weaponry, I think like including the weird cultural things that happen, like specifically like when soldiers have too much time on their hand, they do dumb shit. When an officer is not being a good officer and they're being abusive, and it gets dangerous for a second, and then thankfully like a real officer comes in and is like, hey, knock it the fuck off, right? And checks him down. But then at the end of that book, I had the good officer die, and then the whole battalion got absorbed by the shithead, and everyone's like, what are you gonna do? Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing. And so he got away with a lot of bad stuff, and now he's gonna have to die in book 3. I'm so excited.
Your readers are probably excited too.
Did you have a moment there where the bad officer realized how close he was to someone just killing him straight away? Like where he realized that he was in danger despite kind of being not maybe the smartest person.
Battlefield, but no, because he's a son of the Lord.
Okay.
So it's like I mixed in medieval, like the world is a little bit older politically speaking. So no, he was like a unit. He was just like a shithead. It'd be like one of those like West Point boys going up against and getting sorry, but like sometimes someone's family is so like in right that they're a little bit bulletproof, and then it takes like the sergeant major's like, hey, get in your spot, but at the same time, the sergeant major can't really do anything other than check it.
Okay, so he wasn't really in danger of maybe someone just going,
no,
fuck this guy.
Well, not until they went into battle.
Yeah.
I know this is going to be hard because I have a panel of military veterans. It is before 10 p.m. and we do have kids in the room.
Oh,
Those are my kids.
I'm sorry.
Oh gosh.
I know when Dragon Con yells at us.
Oh, that one's mine. She's heard me curse.
I'm really sorry.
I mean, trust me, if this
When
is
I'm
after
around
10,
vets,
you
it's
could
so
add
hard.
every other word, but
It's so hard around vets though. It's like it just
it's
starts coming
starting
out.
coming out. So I had the unfortunate experience of having my co-author send me his war college papers to edit, in which my response was, I swear to God, if you ever send me a book in APA format, I'm going to kill you. So what is the hardest thing you had to unlearn to write that the military hammered into your head? And TJ, I'll start with you, because we all know the military's like, it has to be like this, it has to be like this. What was the hardest thing to unlearn to actually be able to tell story and not write after action reports?
I never wrote any of these. I got out as an E4. They wanted to promote me when I was going to be a list, but so I guess I skipped out on that one. But unlearning the military. I think there's a degree of learning that the individual is not important compared to the unit, which can be a good functional thing. But when it comes to moving on to your personal life, sometimes you like to write or to create art is an act of self-love. To revise is an act of self-love, and it's a little selfish in a way. It feels like it. So you have to be like, no, this is okay. I'm going to spend so many hours doing this because then it will help other people. I don't know. That's the best I got right now.
You know, for me, it was expanding the description, specifically when writing. So even like, I mean, yeah, because even when I went to the Army War College, it'll start off and it's, okay, so write a paper on X, write like a 10-page paper or whatever, and then it'll be like, all right, now turn that into a 2-page summary. And you crush it down, and then they'll say, all right, turn that into a 2-paragraph general officer correspondence, and make sure you have all the detail of the 10-page paper in 2 paragraphs. So you get in the habit of not expanding, no color, no fluff, no description, just the exact time, date, event, result. That's kind of a situation, task, action, result. That went in there and crush it. So then expanding and adding color to it. Because I love dialogue, and I can write dialogue all day long. And which is, you know, great when I write with Mel, because I don't do a great job in like scene setting description. Originally, when I started, I had to learn how to do that, and Mel was really good at that. So, because the military writing doesn't lend itself to setting the scene or adding the flavor to the environment that's going on, they don't care. Don't really care if anybody reads this crap anyway. So, well, unless you're in school, you know, they do it. But expanding for, you know, adding what, you know, the imagery, the extra imagery that you may originally think for 20 years they didn't want any imagery, and now it's like, well, this needs more, a little bit more. And that was a good thing about working with a co-author who was much more experienced at the time, saying, hey, your dialogue's great, but are they in a room? Are they on a boat? You know, are they in a tank? Are they in a burning building? And then you realize that you were cutting some stuff out that the reader needed. So it took a while to get used to getting into that. So I had to relearn that.
For me, it wasn't really writing because I had come from a writing background. So I'd gone to film school, learned how to write a screenplay format. I went to Defense Information School, learned how to write a news article. Then I went to grad school and I wrote 20-page academic papers. And then as an officer, you're writing white papers and memos and things like that. And as long as I had like the FM with the op order format on it, I could just, you know, grab the template and go. For me, what I've had to unlearn or maybe relearn is when I started working, so I'm the senior editor for Falstaff Dread, which is Falstaff Books' horror imprint. What I had to unlearn was in the Army, I'm kind of a leaf eater. Like I'm a staff officer, I'm kind of schmooze and get people to do what they're supposed to do. But when you translate that to the civilian world, I'm apparently very much more aggressive than I intend to be. I'm like, all right, well, we've got to do this, this, and this, and we've got to do this, and I have this SOP, and I've set this up, and everybody's looking at me like, could you possibly just pull it back a little bit? No, I cannot, because this is who I am now.
Yeah, I'm genuinely trying to think of this because I had a weird career. I grew up in the south of France. Joining the military was a complete culture shock for me. That's why I did it. I needed to change. And so my initial premise in the military was there are two yous. There is the you that grew up in Monaco and southeast France, France. And there's the you that became a Marine and teared up when the national anthem played and still, you know, gets a little bit heavy-hearted when I hear taps. I went to a private military academy that was run by Iwo Jima. There was an Iwo Jima museum that I spent a lot of time watching. The oldest vet was a Korean vet. Most of the drill instructors were Vietnam era, with amazing stories. And then I rolled into the contemporary military. So I think that for me, it's not so much unlearning anything, and I don't think we should unlearn anything. We shouldn't have to. We just find other ways to apply things because military people are outcome driven. I think it's more of, I have since then acquired more multiple personalities under my hat that I fit into my stories, but more, not less.
Yeah, I kind of like, yeah, I agree in the end because I ran a combo shop and then I did re-enlistment, and so there wasn't really a lot of writing other than like saying, so-and-so, and it very, almost like the Joe Friday thing, just the facts. This happened, this lieutenant that's in the field artillery school thought it would be a good idea to go to an adult establishment on a Thursday night by himself, and then drink, and then drive, and then hit a car on base, and why did Lieutenant Snuffy think that was a good idea? Because then you go into the XO, and the XO is going to read that. So I guess just learning to like be more descriptive and writing stuff, but also like they mentioned, learning to like be a little softer with people that aren't in the military, because there's almost a mindset that's truly like, where I just want something like, just do your goddamn job. This is your job. Just do. That's all you gotta do. Do your job. Why aren't you doing your job? But you can't do that to people, like generally in the civilian world. So you have to kind of like tone yourself down a little bit. I guess hopefully I have.
I will say that, like, the one thing that I've noticed is vastly different in the civilian world, or maybe it's just Europe, I don't know. They're a different kind of animal. Collaboration. The idea that if you win and I help you win, that's a good thing. And that you should help me win because we're part of the same organization, town, country, whatever. Sometimes I still pick up trash that I see in the street. I didn't drop it, but it's my street. Why wouldn't I want it to be nicer? And it's, again, you run into these moments and you have to make a choice. Do I change, not necessarily who I am, because again, screw that, but my behavior temporarily to fit into this environment? Or am I right and everyone else is wrong and that's okay too? And that dynamic, I think, is very relevant to the kind of civil military boundary and also, cross-cultural boundary.
Well, as writers, we're also supposed to read, so I don't understand why everybody keeps asking me what show I'm watching, because I don't have time to watch TV. But when you're reading things with military in it that are obviously written by non-military personnel, what drives you crazy the most when you see in books? And I'll start with you, Gordon.
I think I must have been fairly lucky because a lot of the stuff I've read seemed pretty spot on. I remember one of the first military books I read was, I think, Timothy Zahn, who's here, wrote the Cobra series about guys who are, they're augmented, and then the war is won, and they come home, and sort of collectively society says, oh, you guys can't live here anymore. Like, you guys are too dangerous to be here. Which it really is the Vietnam thing where a lot of those guys weren't fit to be back in society. I don't know that I've ever read anything that glaringly, I said, no, that's crazy. That's because even the nonsense I've read, like Barry Sadler's Casca series, he was a Green Beret before he wrote the books. So I feel like I kind of got some stuff right. So I've never really had a throw the book down, that's nonsense moment, I guess.
The weird thing with Cobra pilots is that since we're often in a coordination role, we have to learn how everyone's stuff works. So that 20mm bullet fired from a Cobra will go through about 1.75 inches of rolled homogeneous steel. That kind of stupid stuff that sticks with you even after a couple decades. So there's always something wrong, always. But the thing that drives me up the wall is when someone out of laziness or lack of knowledge just didn't do the research or didn't hire a military consultant, gets it wrong, and the right way would have been cooler. That's what gets me, right? It's what does shrapnel do to the human body? How do concussions work? What does a thermal charge do? What actually happens when a high-powered laser hits a piece of metal and sends spalling inside the compartment, right? All of that stuff is incredibly visually rich and visceral, and it hits hard, and it makes the effects much more spectacular. And why wouldn't you want that? Because you're ignorant and lazy. And that's the thing that I can't stand. Because I wasn't in every branch of the military. I've never been on a submarine except if it was parked in port. But I do my research. I look up videos. I listen to podcasts by old veterans, and I listen to them talk about how they put bunks in the torpedo rooms because there weren't enough bunks to go around. And that stuff is neat. If you are stumbling around in the middle of that when you're tripping over other people's shit that is just piled up all over the place. Sorry, I cussed. Or you know, why a tank going over a bridge is a really bad thing, especially if it flips upside down in the river. Or the impact of running out of dip when you're trying to stay up for 20 hours. There are really fun, cool, visceral human experiences out there that if you're writing about corporate America, you should read business fables. If you're writing about research, you should read about research. And that's what drives me up the wall. It's not when someone gets it wrong. I don't care if there's a safety on a Glock or not. And in fact, in this book, it's a Glock. What matters is, does the fact that it does or doesn't have safety create a cooler situation that could have been exploited by a writer to create a better story?
So my sister, I have, of the 6 kids in my family, 4 of us have served in the military. My sister Taya was in the Navy, and she was reading Slush for a romance publisher. And one of the memorable rants that we were all treated to was the fact that someone got the color wrong of the, that they were painting against the boat. And all I remember is haze gray. It is haze gray. I do not understand why this person didn't at least talk to someone who would have told her it was haze gray. So, and I think that if we are honest with ourselves, if we're reading a book and we've served and we see something like, wow, that was this author. For me, the biggest issue is a little bit what DJ was saying. I can tell the person didn't respect their subject matter enough to do the research that would have made it that much better. And if I'm going to go write a Marine character, I'm going to make sure that I talk to my Marine buddies and be like, yo, can one of you read this and let me know if this is ringing true? The other one is I read a book, specifically picked this book up because the back cover blurb promised that there was a female main character whose past as an Army veteran was figured highly in what she was going through. And I said, wow, I'd really like to read this. There's a lot of books with women protagonists, like women military protagonists, not too many of them that are written by women, so I tried to check it out. And it turned out that the author was actually a dude, which I didn't get from the name until I read the bio at the back. And it was not done well. It was like, oh, I've got this Army veteran in my book, so you'll buy it, but then there was like no part of the character was informed by her experience. And I was like, you know what, that's not, I mean, it made a lot of the enjoyment of the book go away, and I don't think I understood. Because it set up a promise that they didn't fulfill.
Yeah, so for me, there's 2 things. The first one is when they use a military style trope and they forget the fact that most militaries, not even just American, are such diverse organizations. You know, we have stereotypes, and we talk about crayon eaters and Army Navy. You know, it's really when the Army Navy is the only time it's like, you would swear if you weren't a military person, like, these people hate each other's guts. No, we love each other, you know, and we respect each other immensely, but we give each other such horrible stuff. See, I'm working on language.
So, but when you have non-military writers, when you see everyone's kind of like a cookie cutter model, this is the Space Marine, or this is the ground pounder, who's less adept, less capable, less physical than the Space Marine, but they just fill trenches and die. And they have like one character that they just copy paste across each one. When every military, there's no two pilots that are the same. There's no two sailors that are the same. And that's actually what makes it fun, I think, for the genres, because they are so different. The only time a military formation looks, monogamous sort of thing is when they're marching in a formation for a ceremony. That's about the only time where we have no personality.
Yeah.
And even that, you can pick up, he's the jackalope, over there, but it's every race, creed, orientation, it's everybody's totally different, so when you see something when you hear them and it's like, here's the main character's got personality and everybody else is the same person with a different name. That's absolutely not the case. I think the only thing that really cranks me the most though is when civilian writers get to put all this highly classified information like Clancy did, that son of a bitch, and he gets away with it, but the military people with security clearances who know all types of really cool stuff that would be great in books can't put any of it in there.
It's been 10 years.
So we're not allowed to do it, but the people who didn't do it, who, buy beers for SOCOM down there at McDill all day long, they can put whatever they want in their books.
That's why.
Jerks. I hate that. All right, so that one's my number one.
That's fair. I to this day do not put some things in my book, not because they're classified or some of them aren't, but I pick and choose the stuff that I think would hurt someone if someone knew it. And I'm careful about that.
Yeah. If I was doing cyber and electronic warfare, so now I have to worry about these topics.
We had some good answers, so I'm going to try and change up a little. I don't like when action or combat is depicted wrong. It's really, really frustrating. And it's usually because they try to make it dramatic and cool. They add flames to see Thor for no reason. They have someone get shot like 38 times and then just keep coming. And I appreciate, and I try to write violence that is uncanny, understated, disturbing, and life is fragile. It's so fragile, and sometimes weird stuff happens where, some dude keeps coming, but then show the gruesomeness of it or it's macabre, it's not cool, it's not badass. Even Boromir, I love the trilogy so much, it's mortal, but they could have made that scene disgusting, and I would have appreciated it more, right? He did go out awesome, but it should have been a little bit less handsome,
But that was his redemption. I
No.
So it had to be heroic rather than just being sad.
I agree. I just think I appreciate when heroism happens, and I do believe in, I think glory is a little bit toxic sometimes, but I do believe in courage and bravery and all those beautiful things, but they don't often look pretty. They look rough, and they're not done by some 6'6" dude who's super handsome, Lightning McQueen. They're done by a guy that's just busted and kind of average looking. But he really loved his bro, so he just wanted to give everything for it. So I love it when the combat is ugly, I guess. Great.
Okay, so question, do you guys want me to leave time for questions? Oh, good, then I get asked all my own. Okay, we've got one. Okay, give me a minute, let me ask them one more question and we'll open up the floor for questions. Okay, so I know that part of the reason I asked that question is that I DNF'd a book where the woman had worked her way up on a merchant ship to captain, okay? She started at the bottom. She got offended every time they used language. And I was like, guys, that woman would swear the air blew by the time she hit merchant captain. I'm like, especially since this was set in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm going, she would have just been hard as brass tacks. So don't do that. But I know that one of the authors I absolutely love, Elizabeth Moon, does it good. She writes excellent battle, excellent military stuff. who are you reading right now or have read that you think just nails the military stuff in their books?
Well, it's not a fair answer because I'm reading Generation Kill, which was a Rolling Stone reporter, and in the book they just call him reporter, who is embedded with Marines, recon Marines, invading Iraq in 2003, I'm gonna say, and it's real. Like there's real people. That's what I'm reading. So that's not because it's not fiction. Oh gosh, who do I think nailed it? Again, Timothy Zahn. I don't know. Fiction, I don't know.
I'm just looking for an author that you think really does it right, that people can look to see good examples.
Dan Abnett, Dawn's Ghosts, Double Eagle, fantastic on every line. He even actually managed to write a relatable Space Marine, which is not common in Warhammer 40K. Brotherhood of the Snake.
We have friends for you if you're feeling in love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We actually, at our booth in 2822, we made a crayon throne for our Marine founders book, so it looks like the Game of Thrones, except it's crayons instead of swords.
So he can nibble on the top. So
Exactly, in case you need a snack. So Dan Abnett is fantastic, James Webb is fantastic. I'm rereading Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, and his soldiers are generally fantastic. One of the things that he's done that I'm trying to kind of ponder is he basically all the soldiers end up with call signs. So they have a name, and that characterizes them and how they're different. Glenn Cook did the same thing with Black Company. I don't like the Black Company soldiers as much, mostly because they're bad people. But it's interesting. And I think that's what it boils down to, right? We're all different. There are different military services. There are different things. So I guess it's more a question of who writes really good characters in a military scenario.
Rachel?
How long do you have? We can use it to borrow
Two
both of my
authors.
babies. So I'm reading a lot of Harvard right now, and one of the authors that I met at StokerCon, John Lynch, who's also a former Marine, wrote a really good, I think you would classify it as a novella. It's called The Warrior Retreat. And the premise is that there's some buddies who are getting together to have like this moment in the woods where they can just kick back, relax, maybe work through some stuff, just revisit, and then things go very terribly wrong. Highly recommend it. It's called The Warrior Retreat by John Lynch.
Let's see, non-military people write military stuff, or doesn't it?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so, I don't actually have a whole lot of time to read stuff that's not like betas and all that really now, but, so what's funny here? Okay, so everyone knows Matt Denneman and Dungeon Crawler Carl. I swear he's channeling a warrant officer with Carl. I think he's got like the personality of like a pissed off CW2, just like nailed down there. I don't know if that's intentional, but I think he's doing a good job with that unintentionally. For a military writer that I think does military service members the most justice, he's actually a Dragon Con nominee, right? For today, it's Shane Greaves. He's a retired 30-year infantry ranger colonel type. Every one of his characters has personality. Every one of his characters is different. Based on his background, he's very technically adept. So he's one that tries to make everything right inside of there. So he's writing current military in a zombie invasion, and he tries to kind of change it up. And it's like, tanks actually do work against zombies. The only problem is tanks don't keep working long enough to win a zombie apocalypse when you can't get parts and fuel and everything else. So he does a really good job. I like his characters. I like his tactics inside of there. And some of the conversations you have in there, you can swear you've had on a track or on a plane or somewhere along the time. So he does a good job.
I'll go off of what you did with the non-military people. Brandon Sanderson did a surprisingly good job with Stormlight, with Kaladin's war fatigue kind of PTSD vibe. I did get pissed that he was talking about sacred material that I didn't think belonged to him. And I had to process that, and then I realized he did a good job though. I just wanted him to stay in his lane. But it was well done. And I don't know, I can't think of a lot of other fiction, so like obviously Tim O'Brien's classic for a little bit more real stuff, and I couldn't relate to him as much directly, like his prose is fire, so I read it all, but Brian Turner is a little bit less known, but he's the Iraq War Tim O'Brien. And okay, I got a rejection letter from Brian. And he specifically wrote me saying, keep it up, you're doing good, don't give up. And I saved it. I was fired. Right? I got rejected by my hero.
You know, we all missed the total softball of that question. We were supposed to go. This person wasn't the best.
Mame's Planet Side series is also fantastic from the point of view of a wanting to be a retired senior officer who's sent in to unscrew a situation from a staff level down. It's kind of amazing that he pulled that off and made it interesting. Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. If you would like to ask some questions, you can come up to the microphone. Be warned, however, you do not get to ask when the next book is, or when what they're going to do with their characters, because if that was the case, I'd be sitting here bugging Gordon nonstop. So I don't get to, you don't get to. So if you have questions, you can come up with this. Otherwise, I will keep going.
Let's go, Jones, come on.
So I've had a family sort of in combat from World War II to more recent wars, and colleagues too as a defense contractor. And the spectrum of the stories they tell go to your point about each one's different. And to TJ's point about the grittiness, how do you as authors balance that spectrum from war porn glorification to leaving too much out, and to your point, TJ, not relating the tragedy, the horribleness of it all? Do you ever find yourself editing something over and over to get that balance right?
Yeah. Listen, there's a beautiful moment in The Alchemist when they talk about how you have to hold two opposite ideas in your hand at the same time in order to grasp the true beauty of the world, right? Shooting an M191 Vulcan at a vehicle door until, and hitting it in the same spot enough times until the metal catches fire, it's fantastic. No better feeling in the world than doing what you're trained to do and doing it well. I also had a Lance Corporal just get absolutely destroyed by how a squad leader treated him. Not letting him sleep in the same tent as the rest of the unit until he got into a gunfight with them. That squad ended up shooting the wrong person under the wrong circumstances later on. We sent him home, which was another fun experience, being a whistleblower within your unit. But I would say that both of those things are true, and both of those things are valid. And the key is to be able to get both of those things into a story in a way that both the person who wants everyone to be crying in their tent and hating being in the military, and the people who, generally enjoy having jumped out of helicopters, done obstacle courses, or gotten to do really loud things with pieces of equipment. Like both of those are true.
Okay, so for our last question, this is a speed round. We have all heard of the PowerPoint Ranger patch. If you had to develop a writing patch, what would it be? You start, TJ.
Oh, what?
A writing. So we've heard of the PowerPoint Ranger patch. If you have to, okay, does everybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, so when you're in the military, especially as you get higher in ranks and stuff, you end up doing lots of briefings and stuff. You can get really good at doing PowerPoint presentations because we all know how important PowerPoint presentations are. So there's a joke badge that's called PowerPoint Ranger. Just the fact that you've done so many PowerPoints
That sounds
to
like
get
a
the badge. So if you had to design a writing patch for the military, what would it be?
Actually, I have a really funny story about the PowerPoint Ranger bit.
So like a patch that makes you a better writer?
Just a funny patch of what would you get awarded for? You know, like a best smut scenes, best smut writer.
Decent smut writer. No, I don't know. That, jeez. I was getting all serious, the emotions were heavy, and then we're supposed to be like quirky and cool and stuff.
Well, I mean, I've heard you military guys tell stories. If this is a later panel, we've turned it to the no fudge, there I was.
Yeah. I would be,
I'd have to go with like blown suspense survivor.
can I go last?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rachel?
I thought you were talking like a nicotine patch so that
Writing word patch applied.
I'm gonna go find a job that pays me more. I would probably, I don't know if I would do a patch, but I might get a ribbon to hand out to people to be like, yes, I'm a veteran and I'm on this panel. Because I've showed up to veteran writing panels before and they're like, oh, are you interested in this panel? Like, yeah, I'm on it, thanks. So it might be like, yes, I'm a veteran writer.
DJ?
I'd go with night shift for one reason or another. I'm nocturnal, like deeply nocturnal, and one of the nice things about being a writer is when you're starting out and you're trying to increase your word count, right, you keep a spreadsheet. You say, this is how many words I can write in a 10-minute sprint, so on and so forth. My word count doubles after midnight, consistently. Like I'll be sitting on the couch with my wife, we'll be talking, and I will just look at her and start rambling about some philosophical topic or an idea I have for a book, and she'll be like, it's midnight, and it'll be within 5 minutes, it'll be that time. So that's what I go for.
That's one of the most pilot things I've
Yeah, I think for us it would probably be something, we have an unwelcome mat in front of our house, and I think it's that because I tend to, whether it's true or not, like, to be hermit-like and just in our little cave of darkness and solitude. And we need that because if we don't do that, then we don't make books. And I mean, all of this is great. Like, and I know people that go to cons for all the time and they're touring. I'm like, David, when do you write? How do you have time? Because this is not writing. This is great and this is fun, but like this is not our butts in a chair making words happen. For that, we need to be like left alone in our little house, and no one needs to come and bother. So I guess it'd just be like, go away. Don't
Leave me alone, Kat.
do you like having nice things? Because we're like, okay, go away now.
I got another one for you. I go with a semi-pro badge because I've written or deeply edited 18 novels since 2013 while maintaining a full-time job, and it sucks.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that my welcome mat on my front porch says roll for initiative. So, okay, we are at time, so starting, Gordon, would you, back to TJ, would you tell them where they can find you for the rest of the con and how to support you?
Oh, I don't even know where I'm going to be for the rest of the con. Either in this hotel or a different hotel.
Oh, wait, TJ?
Yeah, I came up with a quick one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say something like emotionally honest and be like a scooter patch, but for tears. So when I'm hitting it, when I'm nailing it, I'm usually just crying.
At least once per novel.
And I'm just like, yes, I can get that like righteous surge of like glory, but also, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so where are they can find your social media and all that fun stuff?
We have a website.
I love how he says it like a question. Website.
You got a website.
We do, and if you go there, you can see our books and stuff.
You want to tell them what your website is? Not everybody knows it instantly
know?
who you were.
You don't even know it.
I don't know. I don't need to know. I'm that person. I'm always there with her. So
It was the use of we that gave it away.
it's not the royal. Look up aloneandrews.com.
Another question.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, and I think we're on Amazon and we're going to be in different places. She told me that. when to be there.
I've been carving a book in a tree out there. Somewhere in the woods.
DJ.
I have a QR code here. You can scan it and get access to my stuff. So I'll just have that up here for after the panel. You can also find me up in America's Art, Building 2, 2802. We have a booth there. It's by the escalators in the back near the Asian fusion restaurant.
I have a link tree, and if you go to Rachel A. Brune, you'll find most of the links there will work. It'll be really great. Also, if you're interested in retired werewolves who aren't retired anymore and go back to working for the government, whether they want to or not, Falstaff Books has, they don't have any more copies of it, but they have a bookmark in the writer's track, which has a QR code. One is the QR code for their Shopify, the other is a QR code for a sampler of all of the books that they have here, and so the first part of it will be along with the other Falstaff authors in that QR code.
So DougBurbey.com, just like it's spelled, or Badash Publishing, or Amazon, or the Dealers Hall 2125.
Nice. I got cards with a cool QR code too, see, DJ? I'm on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to get into progression fantasy or lit RPG, or you want to even know what the heck that means, go on Facebook. There's like some really cool communities. You can ping me on Discord, but you gotta search for them.
And I'm Mel Todd. You can find me up in Dealer Hall 2125 or on anywhere under Badash Books. And that is it, folks. Remember to rate us in the app if you like it.
And if you'd like to donate for charity, that's